I'll be quick. I'm not going to presume that you all have been here last year, so we're a very small bakery, a tiny bakery really, in Goran, outside Kilkenny. We call Speltbakers, so we work only in spelt. It's a niche I discovered by accident. It doesn't mean I think all other grains are evil. It's just the way it happened. It's a nice niche to be sitting in with everyone else doing something else. Spelt, just to be quick, is an ancient bread grain. The Roman Empire was fought on spelt, and it was changed. Then wheat is easier to grow and wheat is easier to work with, just in summary. So it changed to wheat, but spelt is a very nice, strong bread grain. And what we've been spelt has become very popular because low in gluten, and a lot of people have wheat intolerances and all this kind of food allergies, so rampant at the moment. So spelt has become a health conscious thing, so a lot of spelt breads are automatically brown, extremely healthy. Come on, Caroline, we're all going to look at you on you sit in front row. Sorry about that. Just thought I'd start. Anyway, so it's a lot of spelt breads are brown and they have grains in them and they're really, really healthy, and we use spelt for everything. So it's our kind of sideline that we do white spelt baguettes, we do all sorts of stuff with spelt, everything is spelt. Last year I was just in the stage where I'd moved out of the kitchen with the support of Leader into a bakehouse, into 2 old sheds across the house. And I was doing it myself with the help of 2 teenage children that are going to come tonight with our sourdough tester, so she's a bit late, so you'll get it later on. And they were basically working from 5:30 till 7 o'clock before school, alternate mornings. And it was all very much heavily dependent on me being there. If I was sick, there was no bread. This year, in the past year, we've moved on. That Bella has since done a really good leaving cert, which goes to show that getting up early is really good for you. And she's now in her gap year working full time in the business. So we've kind of basically expanded to massive potential. We've also have 2 other people who work kind of 50, 60 euro contracts in. So we're getting bigger. We've taken on, we have 8 shops now. We're in Waterford, Carlow and Kilkenny. And we have started market trading, which is really the big change this year. Which for us has been a really, really interesting thing. It improves turnover, which is always good. But it's also our first proper contact with the customer, which makes a big difference. Market trading is really fun trading. We enjoy it tremendously. We're on a Thursday in Kilkenny, on a Saturday in Carlow, and you can kind of, you get to know your customers, you know what they want. And with the bread being a one-day product, I keep trying to say, if you want it, text me, I'll keep it for you. It's a one-day product. I don't make masses of it. I don't want to throw it away at the end of the day. So it's a kind of a change from supermarket bread that is stacked up to the shelves until 8 o'clock in the evening and then hits the bin, which is not a thing I'd like to see happening to food. The other big thing is that we're starting baking courses hopefully this year. There was a debate about it last year, that we could do that, and we're kind of scheduled every second weekend in the months to do a very basic, we're very much home bakers. Like, I'm a geographer by training, I've been a journalist, and I've only by kind of a funny twist of life started doing a bakery. I've always baked. I've always been in Ireland. I'm German. I've been in Ireland for 25 years and I never liked the sliced pan, so I had to bake. But it developed from there, and I think in that way I'm very different probably to the professional bakers. I always feel a little bit I shouldn't be here really. But it's what did you call it? It's a gut baker. I don't know the protein content of my flour, I don't weigh my water, I just put together a loaf. And that way the baking courses will be that way as well, that it'll be very basic to kind of try. I find it a great pity that people have lost confidence to even make a scone, which takes 5 minutes. If you have someone coming for tea, you're much quicker making a scone than going to the shop buying biscuits. So that's where I'm coming from. I'll send off 2 baskets. We have the baguettes that I'm terribly proud of. They're new as well. I didn't do them last year, so you better like them. They're white and a brown baguette, so send that down this way. And I'll give you the stromboli here. They're round white yeast with roast peppers, tomatoes, onions and cheddar in them. So they're the lazy man's lunch. This is a brioche dough. I only brought that because to show that you can do a brioche with spelt. It's a party loaf, they call it party boat in Germany. I think in Ireland you call it a tear and share because that's what you do. Yeah, you just break it off. Will I send it through like that? Break off a piece. Go for it. Go for it. Break off a smaller. Oh look, there's the staff. Hi guys. The other big thing is that we started making sourdoughs. I said last year I'm German and I don't like sourdough, and that's still holding sadly. Disability I have. But since the lads were so keen on sourdough, and you know, excellent Polly, thank you very much. I said I have to make it, and I'm delighted to see Ken here because he actually brought me my first sourdough starter. Thank you very much. And so I started making it. I got them terribly wrong at the start. The chickens ate an awful lot of sourdough, and then we got into it. And they're popular now. They're kind of quite, well, people call aggressive, I think, because I don't soften them up. Try them. I brought you the buckets because I still don't like sourdough, so I make other stuff with sourdough. So I've bought sourdough bruschetta, which I think are really, really nice. It's also something at the market. I know, I'm nearly there. A lot of people say, have you got a smaller loaf? Can you cut that in half? Can I have a third of it because it's only me? Or, you know, bread gets old. So I keep saying there is loads of stuff you can do with bread. You can eat it on the first day, second day, and then, you know, get creative. Would you like to have it? So that's my effort with the sourdough. You can't eat that. I'm not giving that to you. Third. No, it's all got cheese on it. Bucket going through. The beauty of buying in bigger quantities is that you have lovely big buckets to be playing with. So that's what we're at. There is brochures if you want to have a look at it. That's what we do. We have an annual program now. We're getting very sophisticated. My favourite item is in April we have 2 weekends of a dawn chorus. My husband is not a baker, he's an ornithologist, so he takes people out at 5 o'clock in the morning for a dawn chorus in Kilfane Woods in Thomastown, and after that there's breakfast at the bakery. So that's is a nice one. So have a look at that. There's cards there for Kilkenny, Carlow and Waterford, and I pass on to the other lads now. Was I good in time? You were very good. I'm excellent. Thank you very much.
Hello. My name's Joe Fitzmaurice. I used to bake from Blazing Salads in Dublin. That's where I taught myself how to bake. I came from a whole food macrobiotic background and been baking for around 15 years now. Last year I was Clough Jordan Wood-Fired Bakery, and but we changed our brand and our motivation. Got a manifesto together, and it's all in there and on our new website. But a big thing that we wanted to do, three things kind of happened during the year. Just before the Bakers last year, Meet the Bakers last year, Mary Robinson came on, and living in an eco-village, we're in Clough Jordan eco-village in North Tipperary, we would have a lot of discussions on climate change, but it only got into too doomer. We said we got 20 years to get shit together, just collapse. So I said, right, I'll give it 10. I want to transform this country from being based on a chemical-based food system, which is basically our so-called traditional soda breads. I'll show you 3 pictures here. This here is a field, the back of our house. It's where rye is grown. It's grown as a green manure, and our kids play in this field. We were there the other year, and they were Pat was taking it in, and they were out there playing in the hay hocks. This here is a Solvay chemical plant. These are mainly based in around Brussels, around Belgium, but this is where most of the bicarbonate soda that you'll be getting is used. This also is a huge mine called a Trona mine in Wyoming. And that's where the whole of North America and a third of the world gets us bicarbonate soda. So when we had this idea that we are making this lovely traditional bread, it was only invented 150 years ago. And these are the consequences of it. We move it around the world in little plastic containers. This is rye. And so what we started doing, Pat came in, about 2 weeks after we had the discussion here, a baker came in with 2 kilos, and here's the last of it here, of rye which he grew on the backfield. He gave it to me, I milled it, fermented it, and made 100% rye sourdough breads. Went around and fed it to the local people and showed we had made bread from within 500 metres of the bakery. We have a wood-fired oven as well, so we get our local timber and use that as well. And the only thing was salt, and we used natural sea salt. Everything that showed that we can make bread locally and don't have to have importing flour from all over the world. So what I've come up with is to get you all to make that transition is what I'm calling the common loaf. This is a natural fermented sourdough. So we made a film, we shot a video. It's on riotrye.ie. If you go to our website, there's full PDF. You can print out all the instructions, watch the video, and we have it that you make a starter from 1 week. You start beginning of the week, you build through a rye starter, and at the end of the week, you make a common loaf. But especially for today, we have this idea as well that we can't use soft Irish flour. And I went looking for it and I couldn't find any without any chemicals in it. So I started using some soft English flour. In the recipe I have it that we use strong flour, which is traditionally what we would use. But I said just for today, I'll make some using soft English wheat.
Can you explain to the audience very quickly the difference between soft and strong?
Soft. Usually within Ireland, because we don't have extreme temperatures, we would have a lower protein content within our flour. And so we have what we call soft flours, primarily used for cake making, pastries and like that. It would be crumblier. Most of our flours that we would be using would be imported from Canada, Ukraine. And we saw the difficulty, flour prices shot up during the year. When Russia, they were going to blockade the borders, and all of a sudden the flour prices wasn't going to be able to come out of Ukraine, and now they've stabilised a little bit over there. We imported from Canada, Australia, places with high temperature, and that helps us make better gluten formation and stretchier dough. But I had used other soft flour to use during long fermentation, and if you keep it at a cooler temperature, and then just using a stretch and fold technique, which I do with these, you can make, well I hope so, really good sourdough breads. So we're going to cut these, because I haven't seen what it's like. I want to see what we like using the English flour. That's not bad. And as I say, the technique that we produced was that you'll do it in...
Is that a Riot Rye or what?
So there's 100% rye.
Yeah.
I use a sourdough starter, 100%, so it becomes 20% of the final dough. And then I use strong wheat. And I was looking, this is the strong one
Is
here.
that whole grain or is it just
White flour.
unbleached?
Yeah, because what I was doing is, when we got the 100% rye, I said, how can I get people to make this shift over? People aren't going to make that shift. So I took the bread, this keeps on winning gold awards all the time, and it's one of the most popular breads. So I said, if I can give people the bread that they find most palatable, have to make that change slowly, show how easy it is, remove this concept that sourdough is this, really difficult thing. It was made for thousands of years. Before the industrial chemists start getting involved in our food system, this is the bread we ate. So we can go back to that, and this is part of the work we're trying to do now. We also started running courses, so we get a lot of people. Try the two different types. That's a strong one. Put them in here. And what I do is I get you all to bake them in Pyrex dishes at home. And this will turn your own home oven. The steam will catch it in there and it helps them bake, and it creates a chamber within your oven, and you can create these really simply. You get them. You can also just put them in your fridge, retard it overnight, and then put it straight into the oven. And then first thing in the morning, you'll have a wonderful bread. So that's what we're doing these days. And that's about it. What else do we do? Apart from that, yeah, we do make breads. We sell them mostly within Limerick, Nina, and in Cloughjordan, where we have a lovely bread club as well, where all the local ones may get the kids. They were going around this morning.
Soft.
That's a soft one. Here, I want to try something. So this is made just with soft English wheat.
I brought some olive oil after doing this last year, realising that I prefer a little bit of olive oil with my bread. I'm not sharing. just so we're clear. No, olive oil's good.
And I've sliced up the this is it. We'll send it around the other way. What I want to look at, rye grows really well in Ireland, really simply. As a green manure, like we've got a ton of it sitting in Cloughjordan, but it'll be used to grow again as a ground cover. They don't even grow it as a food. And I see it in other organic farms, they're growing it, not milling it, not fashioning it, and just either feeding it to the animals, but it's highly nutritious. Ferments so easily. So what I would be loving is that we can support local farmers growing rye grain on a local community level. You can mill it, and we would.
Mill it?
Pardon me?
Who can mill it?
Well, like I've got a little mill that size. It would get through about 50 kilos in a day. Be enough. You can get really good mills now that would easily produce enough for a community. And just stone mills that can easily just. That's what I did with the 100% rye. That Pat gave me. I just milled it, and then you start water to it, it'll ferment.
I've seen a portable mill as well.
Pardon me? Yeah, I have a little portable.
During the army, when they were moving the armies, they would have portable mills that fed the entire army.
Yeah. And because it's so nutritious, and it's much better than. Your kids can't play in these kind of places, you know? They can of those. That's it. Thank you.
Now, I think I'm the only commercial baker here on this lot of wonderful idealists, because I have 7 bakers working for me, so we produce a fair bit of bread. Now, my background is I was a chef. In fact, I had the first Michelin star in this country in 1974. So I'm a foodie from way back. And when I retired in '99, the idea was to have some kind of a project to keep my brain going, because otherwise I'm so lazy that I would put down roots in front of a television set. So I started in a little 2-car garage, about that size. And now I have an industrial unit which is bigger than this room, and I have a total of 17 employees.
What year
which
did you
is
start?
99. So we've grown pretty rapidly, and we've grown really by trying to rob the best ideas we can from both Ireland and from France. My main hero is a baker called Xavier Honorin in Valence. And Xavier was part of the French baking team that won the Bakers World Cup in 1996. So, you know, he's a really, really seriously trained baker. I mean, we were discussing, she was saying that she's a gut baker. Well, now, Xavier is a brain baker. He's a techie, and he knows everything about the food science involved. But the interesting thing, he is now turning into a gut baker and working with his feelings rather than with all the technical knowledge he has. And we're following him. We're going that way too. And the latest thing for us is bulk fermentation. Rather than making the individual loaves, and we use a retarder which sort of slows, we use them a very, very slow fermentation period. Now we're doing boxes of dough, which we leave overnight to develop the flavour, and then we don't need the dough at all. It's a very, very slack dough. We just tighten it by sort of just doing that on the sides. That's all we do with it. And the result is terrific flavour. Well, I'm biased. I think it's got terrific flavour. Be interested to see what any of you think of it later. We use a sourdough that I started in '96 before I ever had the bakery, and I got a box of organic grapes from a famous organic supplier in Cork called Organic Joe. Not Joe. And he gave me a box of slightly manky grapes that were a bit over the top. So he gave me those, and I got one of these plastic buckets, mashed up the grapes, mixed flour and water into the bucket, put it in a warm place in the kitchen, and 4 or 5 days later I had a slightly smelly sourdough. And I'm still using the same ferment today. And then I was lucky enough to get a chance to go to Aurillac, to a bakery school for a short period. And I learned about the tradition française, the French traditional bread. So that's the basis of what we do for our day-to-day white yeasts. Now, and again, because I'm a Francophile, the flour I use is French as well. We use a Tradition Française type 65, which is relatively high protein, and it's a sourdough friendly type of wheat that they use for this, and it's government regulated within France, and there are no additives, and it's unbleached. So it's a pretty serious flour. And at least I know how to use the damn stuff, at this stage of my life. So that's what we use for our day-to-day. I'd be interested to see what you think of the flavours. The problem is I'm trying to be a commercial bakery because I have a big wage bill to pay at this stage. But at the same time to try and do the best bread that most people can get at in Cork.
Talk about the mixture of mechanisation versus handwork as you've scaled up, Declan.
Well, the mixing has to be done by machine. So yes, we do that. The dough after that gets very, very little mechanisation. We have what's called an intermediate prover to handle divided. The dough is, sorry, I apologise. The dough is divided by machine. We don't weigh out each loaf to take too long. It's not as kind to the dough as weighing it by hand, but practicalities. But we then have an intermediate prover, which takes the dough after it's weighed out and lets it grow or start to grow, and then we finish it by shaping it. That's how we've been working since virtually day one. And we've moved from that now to this bulk fermentation where the dough is very, very slack. We don't need it anymore, we just tighten it, and we divide it and get it into the oven as well, whatever way we can, because it's a big sloppy loaf of bread and it's not that easy. But we have what's called a loader, which throws the dough into the oven for us. which virtually all artisan bakeries in France use. And we're happy enough with the results. And I'd be interested to know what you think of them. I brought now a couple of things to taste tonight. A wholemeal sourdough, brown sourdough, which is pretty ugly looking loaf, but I think it's got great flavour. And this is one we had a little bit of fun with. It's a sourdough with black sesame and black onion seeds added to it. Now, the Chinese use black sesame as a health food. The Arabs use black onion as a health food. So we're covering half the world between the two of them. And I love the flavour. So I'd be interested to see what you think of it. This is a white yeast, bulk fermented. And then we have a white sourdough, bulk fermented again. And another one of our little fun ones. This one owes a certain amount to High Bank. We call it a medieval bread because we worked with a test baker in the medieval city of Ghent. And it's a wholemeal sourdough with figs, dates, walnuts, almonds and hazelnuts added to it, which made it a little bit dense. You know, so I found by adding extra vitamin C to the sourdough, we could lighten it. And we added the vitamin C by using High Bank cider apple syrup. So we can say totally natural. And we achieved something which I think is quite remarkable. And there was an International Cheesemakers Congress in Cork last year. That's the medieval. And we were asked to provide the bread for it. So we gave them our brown sourdough, our brown yeast, red wine and walnut, and some of the medievals as well. And they had tasting tables for all the delegates afterwards so that they could taste each other's cheeses. And we found they were fighting to have the medieval bread on their tables. I thought it would be fine with fresh goat's cheese or something like that, but they all wanted it. Hard cheese, soft cheese, blue cheese, no matter what. So it's quite a successful idea. So we keep on trying out new things all the time. I suppose every single week in the year we try something different. But that's the enthusiasm of the group of bakers I have and the pride they take in what they do. I have one Turkish baker, for instance, and this guy makes a Turkish pita, which is a flatbread, and I gave it to a Turkish friend in Cork, and he said to me, "That's better than I've ever had in Turkey." So I told Shukru, my baker, this, and he said, "Of course." No false modesty there. And I have a Latvian baker who produces rye sourdoughs, and he was using his grandmother's recipe. But he went back to Latvia last year and he found that he had a grandaunt with better recipes, and now grandmother is discarded and he's using grandmother's recipes. So we encourage anybody with a pride in what they do to produce for us, and we give them the credit for it. For instance, this wholemeal sourdough is produced by a young lad from New Zealand, and he's very proud of it. So we have a sort of an international group, but they're all enthusiasts, and I try and pick their brains as much as I can. So that's about as much as I can tell you, I think.
Questions for the three? There have to be.
I presume because fresh bread, well-made bread, goes off so quickly. How do you distribute it, before it goes off?
Well, those loaves I passed around, I baked them 24 hours ago,
Right.
so they tasted fine.
And
And I try and teach as well. A lot of people, I would get a lot of the students coming into the bakery, and I get them to, I keep it low for about 5 days, and then I put it back into the oven, 20 minutes, and then you just leave it for 20 minutes, and it'll come up as good as the day you baked it. None even need to wet it. The sourdough breads, they have these quality that they will retain their moisture. It's not like the industrial breads, you just get them the dough and they're stuck together and then they fall apart. And that's not the way bread used to be. Used to be when you like French onion soup and you have a crouton, you put it into it and it would soak up all the lovely moisture back into it. Try that with an industrial thing and it'll just completely disintegrate.
How do you store it for the 5 days?
You can just keep it in, I find cloth bags work really well.
Okay.
If you are, after a couple of days, if you put it in a plastic, make sure you take it in and out at least every day. Because
Airtight.
no, I wouldn't. You want air moving across it because you'll get molds growing on it otherwise. If you don't have it airtight, no mold will grow on it. Because the lactobacteria have a natural antibacterial in it which prevent moulding. They're killed during the oven baking process. Will come back again after 3 days. So when the other molds start trying to come back. And I especially find that with our 100% rye, which you wouldn't even cut on the first day. It's only get it to its best at kind of 3 days. So I bake during the day up until night, but I try to get to bed, try to finish. Because of that, the breads I make, they want to last a long time. I'm not going to try and work on it just to get it to you an hour earlier. When the loaf of bread is supposed to last a week. So we try and keep it that way.
Can I add to that? I actually brought a loaf of bread up with me that I made on Monday. It's sourdough. And I thought it might, I didn't know what I was expecting to find here, so I just thought it might be interesting. But I left it in the car. But it's about 5, what is it, tonight? So it was made on Monday. Well, I started it on Sunday because it takes 24 hours with the slow fermentation, and it's delicious, and you wouldn't even need to put it in the oven to reheat it. It's amazing, but that's the lactic acids, right? So it sort of self-preserves.
I think the rule of thumb is the longer it takes to make the bread, the longer it keeps. But for something like your ordinary yeast bread, if you're selling commercially, you have a one-day product, so you need to get it to the shops early.
Can I just ask a question about wood-fired ovens? A lot of bread, you need steam in the oven to cook it. So do you clear the fire out and steam it, or do you even steam the breads, or how do you?
Yeah, like the kind of wood-fired oven I have, it's called a retained heat masonry oven.
Okay.
So you light your fire in it the day before, and then the fire heats up. It's 4-inch concrete bricks and 5 inches of cement. And that retains the heat then indefinitely until I put the bread in to take it back out again. Like it's, in the 3 years since we built it, it hasn't gone down below 100 degrees. So there's no fire during the baking process.
Yeah.
So I steam the oven then. I just spray, because usually the most deck ovens will have a button on it and just inject steam into it. So I just have a sprayer. And I'd recommend at home, just use a sprayer into your oven. And that's why I was recommending home bakers bake within. You'll see in some of them using a cast iron pot. We having to preheat them up to 250 degrees, and this you can just put your cold dough into it and put it cold straight into your oven. I take them straight out of the fridge in the glass dish, straight into, and that will retain the steam in it, and you get to that crusty loaf without steam.
Can I just ask something about you talking about 100% rye flour, and then you said you fermented it?
Yeah.
You fermented flour?
Yeah. As in that's what bread is fermented flour. And that's the important part of it, by reducing the amount of yeast you do. If you're not using, sourdough is fermented flour. So yeah, to make a sourdough starter.
The starter anyway.
Pardon me?
That's the starter you're referring to.
Making a starter is you're fermenting flour, yeah. And And that's the very important part. See, lacto fermentation, it's really, especially when you start eating whole grains or into wholemeal flours, there's an enzyme called phytic acid, and it prevents the absorption of B vitamins, minerals, magnesium within the gut. And traditionally we always lacto fermented all the grains that we ate. So when you eat bread that hasn't been fermented, it prevents the absorption of those vitamins and minerals into the gut. So you're not actually getting the nutrients that are within the grain. So that's why it's an important part. That if you're making a yeast, make sure it's a very long fermented yeast dough. Get into long fermentation. Or else get into sourdough breads, which are lacto fermentation.
I'll stand up because I've got something to show. I want to avoid this being an ad. The point is, I was working with a French baker up in Donegal. Some of you may know him, I don't know. And his name is Frank Pasquerier. And he's very proud of his 12-year starter dough. I'm assuming that Declan has a longer member of the family in his starter dough. But he said it is not possible to improve on the bread using a special water, a structured water. And I said, well, would you accept a challenge? I said, yes. I rang him back 3 weeks later, and I had to reintroduce myself, and he says, oh, Douglas, magic! He said he's never made better bread in his life. And this is a master baker. And with his commercial, so with his sourdough, he's putting in a little bit of yeast. I think it's, if I correct the details, 3.4 ounces or whatever it was grams, to 1 kilo of flour. He's now using 1.4. And he said the structure of the bread, the flavour, he's big into flavour, being French, and so he said, and he's selling more. So the
holy water, is it?
this is an Austrian product, and it's using water to treat water, and it has a very weak magnetic effect that stimulates the yeast. I don't know enough science about whether it's stimulating the sourdough, but we have 280 artisan bakeries in Austria use it. We now have 4 here. And when I talk to people in the food business about the ingredients, they just think that water is H2O, comes out of a tap and there's nothing else to be done with it. I would say and argue that's very different. I would guide people away from mains water and say, where are the holy wells that haven't been contaminated? And back to that. And if we could, my contribution tonight is to ask the assembled company, is can we get back to that tradition? We went to the holy wells for healing and fresh water and vibrancy. So I'm just asking about that.
Do any of you do anything with your water supply?
No.
If there's a possibility of open discussion there, I brew beer, among other things, and there is a matter of water adjustment, so that if you live in a particularly hard water area, you can adjust your water with natural chemicals, or if you live in an area where the water may be too soft for that particular type of, say, beer or bread or whatever, that you can chemically adjust it, but with natural chemicals to balance that water. And therefore, I think what this gentleman is saying makes very, very good sense. However, there isn't one fix that will fix all water areas, because all water areas are different. If that's any help to anyone.
Can I ask a question about, well, it's not, I don't know, it's a statement really. A lot of people are scared of the word sour when they see sourdough. I was wondering...
We could use a different word.
Yeah.
Sweet.
We could say liquid levain or liquid leaven.
Yeah.
In other words, you're going back to the biblical term
Natural, yeah.
of leavened bread,
Yeah.
right? Sourdough.
Yeah.
Can I ask Mr. Ryan, there's two things. One is,
how important do you think the French flour is vis-a-vis what we have available to us here? The other thing was...
He's the expert. He knows
So
more
you're
about flour than I do.
using the
My
French flour, though?
gut feeling is I'd be much, much happier to continue using the French flour.
Yeah.
And I'd be more sure of it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I talked to Donald Creedon in Macroom Mills, who does a lot of, he mills an awful lot of organic flours, and he told me that most of the wheat grown in Ireland simply isn't strong enough to use, except about 1 year in 6. So I took him at his word, and I've kept with the French.
Yeah. The other thing is the bulk fermentation. This is very interesting.
Yes.
Have we been wasting our time kneading all those years?
Um,
So is all your bread now made?
no, we're still playing.
Yeah.
We're still learning. We're still trying it out.
But it's just, you mix it very wet.
We mix it quite slack,
Yeah.
and then we let it ferment, and we
Overnight.
tighten it 3 times
Right.
during the process. And we're very happy with the results. And you've tasted it there.
Yeah.
What did you think?
This is the big
what
white
did-
one, isn't it?
What did you think of the flavours of those breads? I think they're great. No,
They are great.
Joe, just pick up on the flour. You've only got 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, I like that most of the, like us in Macroom and Ballybrad, they've stopped, they were growing in Ireland. See, we have this idea as well that we need to have a consistency and a homogenization of our products. Like, I can understand, like, as you're talking about the water and trying to get a consistency within your products, but what I would be really think wonderful to see is like that we going around France and you have regional variations within the grain that is grown, and you can go into them and you have regional variations within the bread that would be in those places. So we wouldn't just be perceiving, you know, and so you would go into an area and the bread would be different. Wouldn't be the same as you going everywhere. So we're not trying to, and then you can appreciate, and then the baker locally to that area understands that. Like, I know a wonderful baker working in Holland, and he gets fresh flour comes. It's milled every 2 weeks from the windmills because the scale he works gets it from a windmill. And for his first couple of days, he has to understand that flour because it's not a homogeneous product. He has to spend his skilling up how exactly that flour is working, and his skill level is huge. But the product, the breads that he is then making are wonderful breads, and he has this understanding. And then to be a baker who's not trying to make the same bread as that baker, they're trying to make their own, putting their own thing with the resources that they have. So yes, that's why this one comes from flour that's brought in from all over the world. Mm-hmm. It's strong flour. I don't know, they'll get it from wherever, it's coming seasonally from Canada, Australia. And this one comes from England. They're very similar. So I'm trying to look at, more localised flours. But I couldn't get any Irish ones without any chemicals in them. I couldn't buy them. So
What chemicals are they putting in?
bicarbonate of soda and, I'd say, pardon me?
Bicarbonate soda, it's NaC.
Yeah.
You know, it's a natural product that your body develops as a buffer.
Yeah, but that's not how you're getting it. You're getting it from this chemical factory there.
How did they make bread in Ireland before the soda?
They fermented, they would put wheat grain and then using the buttermilk, they would naturally ferment, have the lactic acid within the buttermilk, ferment it and then bake it. But we came from a very different system back then. The milling was very rough. And they talk about, like, traditionally bread would just wear down people's teeth. It was so rough. And it was a different place.
Let's go back to that.
Yeah. There's no need to. Traditional. We don't have to be we want to take those and move it on to where we can grow.
Is anyone growing like heritage wheat like Emmer or Einkorn here in Ireland?
There's a
Done with the
it's
mix?
up in Dunani. Is it what's?
Brown bag.
Yeah, is that they're called? And he's growing spelt. I got a visit from a baker from, a grower from Cork there the other week, growing spelt, wheat and rye locally. And he asked me to test that, gave me a kilo of each. So, but he's wondering what scale. He's fearing that he's kind of ahead of the curve as well, that people just, you know, as we're like that, you do have those huge inconsistencies. Our weather changes like dramatically, you know, so if people are expecting he's trying to sell it into the market, it's like you have to, I think, change people's perception of the grains, and that's why the industrial places use so many chemicals to get a consistency within the product. So,
Is it organically grown what he's growing in Cork?
yeah.
Just by gentleman now, this.
We grow organic wheat for many years, and the problem we had was that we couldn't bring or get the protein levels which are needed to make a universal flour, and you would need about 13.5% protein, and the best we ever got in the best year was 9.2. It went low as 7.8. And
Sorry, this is Josephine Plettenberg, which is a long-running organic farm.
the protein levels are depending on the sunshine levels, and this is where we have a problem in Ireland. And we also grow rye. The problem with rye is that rye is a grain which doesn't need a time of dormancy before germinating. And if you have humid weather conditions at harvest time, the grain will start sprouting in the ear, and then the grain is useless. And in 3 out of 5 years, we had to throw away the crop. And this is why it's a highly risky crop for farmers in Ireland.
But Joe, that's where rye is a wonderful grain.
Yeah.
Because the lactofermentation, it'll change that enzyme in it. And we can, only if you're going to use it for a sourdough bread. That process changes that enzyme, that does sprout on the grain. And you can then use it for making bread. But it can't be used in a yeasted one.
Well, once the grain has started to sprout in the ear, you cannot use it for bread making anymore.
Couldn't even harvest it.
It's still outside, standing outside, and it starts sprouting outside before you can harvest it.
Yeah.
You can't use it anymore.
The ones, and it gets all the little, because the 100% rye I made had started sprouting as well.
Yeah.
And this bread here, that's what I wanted to try and make this. This is a 9% wheat.
Mm.
And we're having it here, and it's like, this is the quality of it. Soft, 9% wheat.
Mm.
But how do you store it when it's wet? Because you have to dry it, you can only store dry grain. You can't store wet grain.
The ones that had sprouted?
Yeah.
It was, well, they hung it upside down and then dried it on a flat.
Okay, it's on a small scale.
Oh, a tiny scale, yeah.
So I think it would be nothing for, let's say, to grow commercially in Ireland.
Yeah, but on small local levels, which is where, and this, as I was saying, this 9%, this is why I was really interested in trying it out, using a 9%, a soft English one, because we keep on saying that we can't use these, you know?
But you see, the same as well when we had all these different protein levels, and I had to try to bake with it. And then you could do what you wanted. I think nothing happened. It was just impossible, and you couldn't think I could work with it, but I couldn't expect my customers to try out what will it be and try around, let's say, and throw away 5 kilos that they paid for. And they have to find out first what you have to do to get a decent loaf. That is something that you can do for yourself, but not if you grow grain and you want to sell it and you can't expect your customers to play around if they have to pay for it.
One thing I want to add is, I think that Joe would be proud of what you made from these grapes. So that was a very tasty grape.
Thank you. As a matter of interest, I was looking at our rye flour. We got some in from a new supplier the other day, and the name on the bag was Killian Müller Stadt. Now, Saint Kilian was the Irish monk who went out and re-Christianized, or attempted to re-Christianize a lot of Europe. And here was his a name place still in use all these centuries later. And it came back into Ireland, back into Cork.
Just to add to the flower, Esther and I, as well as running Barron's Bakery, we're also very interested in biodynamic agriculture and gardening. And 2 years ago, we grew a small pot of biodynamic wheat in Cappaquin. Now, it was a brilliant summer and lots of sun, Joseph. But anyway, we haven't milled the grain yet. We've about 60 kg of grain. And so we're going to invite all you bakers to come down to Cappaquin sometime and see if we can make bread out of it. We'll be very interested in having that.
Excellent, thank you.
There's another thing, if I may. Is there something here?
No, go first.
No. Is, you know, for the moment, I think we're probably losing the point a little bit. There are wonderful rye grains available that we can import because there isn't a great availability in this country, and commercially it's probably a little bit difficult to grow at the moment. Maybe, you know, we import from, I think, St. Kilian. Was it Würzburg in Germany that he's the...
It's German, but I don't know where, to be honest.
Würzburg in Bavaria. It's a beautiful city. I lived there for a couple of years. But in the meantime, to work with the grains that are available to us, and once people start to use more and more of it, then it may get our own Department of Agriculture into a breeding program of growing grain that is much more suitable to our climate, and breeding grains that would have a much less tendency of sprouting while they're still on the stalk in the field. So if we started baking first and made a market for it, then in tandem perhaps get on with our agricultural department, like Tagus, I suppose it is, to breed new grains. We did it in the past with malting barley. We did it with feeding barley. So I think it's possible to do it also with rye. Possibly to answer that gentleman's question, if there's a demand for it, then I think you know, there'd be the will to grow more suitable varieties for our own climate, and therefore to help our own local producers.
Actually, we got this wheat from Ernest Mackey. He's a biodynamic grower in Wicklow, and this wheat actually was developed in Switzerland, suitable to the Irish climate, which is damp and cooler than your typical French continental climate. So, and Ernest says it grows really well. He's very satisfied with it, and he knows more about it because we're not farmers.